The portion of Nasi is always read either the Shabbos after Shavuos or sometimes even before Shavuos. And therefore we must say that Nasi is directly connected with the holiday of Shavuos. How does the Parsha of Nasi connect with the holiday of Shavuos? Number two is, we speak at the end of the portion pertaining the gifts that the Nasiim, the princes of every tribe, brought to the Holy Temple. After the Holy Temple was inaugurated, so for the first 12 days, the 12 princes of the tribes of Israel brought a special sacrifice in order to inaugurate the altar in the Holy Temple. And we find something interesting here. It says that on the second day to the offerings, in verse number 18, in chapter number 7, it says, by Yoim Hasheni, on the second day, Hikriv Nisanel ben Suar Nasi Yisachar. Who was the one that brought the second day the sacrifice? This was the leader of the tribe of Yisachar, and his name was Nisanel ben Suar. And the Torah goes on to say, Hikriv es Karbonot, he brought a sacrifice, whatever it was. And then it goes on to say, so Rashi tells us here, if you look at verse number 18 and verse number 19, we find the word Hikriv. You see that word Hikriv? Hikriv in verse 18, he offered. And again in verse number 19, Hikriv, he offered. You see that? Now there's a difference in spelling between the two Hikrivs. The Hikriv the first time has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 letters. And the second time Hikriv has only 4 letters. What letter is it missing? The letter Yud. So the question is, why is it that Hikriv is missing the letter Yud the second time? And why is the word Hikriv mentioned twice over here? So we find a very interesting Rashi. Rashi tells us the following, that Ruvain, who was the oldest child of Jacob, came to Moses and told Moses, why is it that Yisachar is bringing the sacrifices the second day? Yehuda brought it the first day. I understand, Yehuda, he's the tribe of all the kings. So Yehuda could be first. But why is Yisachar before me? At least I should be the second day. So Rashi tells us that for 2 reasons, Yisachar was the one that brought it the second day. Number one, that his tribe was famous for the study of Torah. That his tribe was a bunch of Torah scholars. So number one, because they were Torah scholars, they got respect. And therefore they were first before the tribe of Reuven. And secondly, it was the leader of the tribe of Yisachar that gave the idea of how they should inaugurate the altar. So this was really their inspiration. They came to Moses and said, Moses, we want to participate in the inauguration ceremony of the Holy Temple. And therefore we want to do this. Moshe Rabbeinu went back to God and asked God, can we accept their sacrifices? This is what they want to do. God said to Moshe, yes, you shall accept their sacrifices, but do 1 sacrifice per day. In other words, don't bring all 12 tribes in one day to bring the sacrifices. Break it up over 12 separate days, and each day another leader of another tribe will bring their sacrifice. The first day will be Judah. He is the king of all the tribes. The second day will be Yisachar. So now Reuven comes to Moshe and says, I want to be at least second. So Moshe says, no, you can't be second. Why? I spoke to God, and God said that Yisachar has to be second. So to imply that Yisachar was commanded by God, in Pasuk Yutes, in Pasuk 19 it says Hikriv without the letter Yud. Hikriv without the letter Yud could also be read Hakrev, as an imperative. Go Yisachar, you are to be the one to bring the sacrifice today. Even though Reuven is causing a big fuss and doesn't want you to bring it, Hakrev, go and bring the sacrifice. Why? For this is the word of God. God said that we should bring the sacrifices based on how the people of Israel encamped around the temple. The first group was Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zevulun. So they were the first three to bring the sacrifices. So this is basically why the word of Hikriv is mentioned twice, to tell us for two reasons Yisachar brought it second. Number one, they were great Torah scholars. Number two, because of the fact that he gave the idea. And therefore, the second Hikriv is missing a Yud, to tell us it was an imperative that against the will of Reuven, God told Moshe to tell Yisachar, Hakrev, go and bring the sacrifice. This is the basic interpretation of the Parsha. This is the simple or logical explanation according to Rashi of why Hikriv is mentioned twice and why the second time Hikriv is mentioned without the letter Yud. Being that Nasi always falls out around Shavuos, we must say that there's another connection between the portion of Nasi and Shavuos and the missing Yud. What happened on Shavuos? What is Shavuos all about? One of the main things that happened on Shavuos is God took a nation that was a nation of slaves, and He said to them, you are to become a nation of leaders. And He tells the people that you are to know, Va'atem tiyu li mamlechas kohanim. You are to be a kingdom of priests, v'goy kodesh, and a holy nation. What does it mean to be a kingdom of priests? The job of a priest is to bring God to the people and to bring people unto God. So now, this slave is now transformed to a leader. And therefore the Torah comes and tells us the following. When it comes to leadership, when there are no leaders, you have to rise up and become a leader. However, most of us have what we call false humility. And we say to ourselves, how could I become a leader? Who am I? Am I bigger than the other person? Am I better than the other person? Who gives me the right? Who empowered me with that right to tell other people what to do, or to lead people, or to inspire other people? So we are told that the portion of Nasi comes right after Shavuos. What happened on Shavuos? God gave us the Torah on Sinai. And the famous Medrash tells us that all the mountains came before God and said, God, put the mountain upon me, right? All the children sing that song. And this mountain said, I'm the largest mountain, put it upon me. And the other one said, I'm the most beautiful mountain, put it upon me. And God said, no, you're all arrogant. I'm going to put the Torah on Sinai. So the Alter Rebbe asked a question. If God said, I'm putting the Torah on Sinai, because Sinai is the smallest of all mountains, and Sinai is humble, so why not put the Torah into a valley? A valley is even more humble than Sinai. Sinai is still arrogant, it's still a mountain. So the Alter Rebbe goes on to explain what is the definition of humility. And we spoke about this many times. There's two basic important ideas when it comes to humility. Number one is to recognize that the power that you have is not your own, but is God-given. If you were born with a talent to sing, or a talent to draw, or a talent to play a musical instrument, or a talent to simply lead or manage or create, that talent was given to you by God, number one. That's the first thing you have to realize. It's not your own. You didn't create that talent. You were given that talent. So don't be so haughty. Don't be so arrogant. Number two, the belief is that if someone else was given your talent, that person would outdo you and accomplish much more. So therefore, it says, Moshe kibel Torah misinai. We read in the first Mishnah of the Ethics of our Fathers, Moses received the Torah from Sinai. And the question is, did Moses receive the Torah from Sinai? No. He received it from God. He didn't receive the Torah from a mountain. The mountain is inanimate, it doesn't talk. Yet the opening statement in the Ethics of Our Fathers is Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai. Moses received the Torah from Sinai. Since when does Sinai give the Torah? So the answer is that Moshe Rabbeinu emulated the qualities of Sinai. That Moshe Rabbeinu realized that he was chosen by God. He was given these special qualities. Yet at the same time, when he walked down the street and he saw another person, he realized that that person, Jew or non-Jew, if that person was the recipient of these great qualities of leadership, that person would outshine Moses. So on one hand, he was a staunch leader. He was a strong leader. He said what had to be said. He wasn't a little quiet, meek individual. He was powerful. At the same time, he was also humble, because he realized that those talents are not his. It was God-given. And that is the meaning of humility. Humility is not naivete. It does not mean I don't know what I am. On the contrary, humility knows I know I have this talent. I know I have to use out the talent. At the same time, I have no right to walk around thinking I'm better than other people and looking down on other people, but rather realizing that this talent was given to me by God. And that's why it says, Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. Why from Sinai? Because on one hand, Sinai was the smallest of all mountains. It was humble. On the other hand, it wasn't totally a valley. It knew that it had talents. It knew it was given God-given talents. And similarly, when it comes to leadership, each one of us has to know that we were endowed with this power to lead. We are a kingdom of priests. And therefore, we have to realize God gave us this talent, and therefore we have to use out the talent. What happens if a person says, I have no power to lead? So comes along the Torah and says, Hikriv. You should know that the Torah tells us, pertaining to the tribe of Yisachar, that the word Hikriv is missing the letter Yud. Why is Hikriv missing the letter Yud? Because the letter Yud is the smallest letter of the entire Aleph base. It's a little dot. It represents humility. Comes along Yisachar, and Yisachar was humble. He says, I'm not going to fight with my brother Ruvain. He's an older brother. He wants to do it, let him do it. Comes along God and says, Hakrev, go and do it. There's no place for humility here. The humility has to be totally forgotten. In other words, when you have to lead, go and lead. So the Torah tells us that when it comes to leadership, when it comes to being a living example, when it comes to being a teacher or a parent, even though on one hand we have to realize there's God-given talents, and therefore there's no reason for arrogance, on the other hand, be like Sinai, be a mountain, be bold, and do what you have to do. Don't become a valley. In other words, to allow people to step upon you, and to be so humble that you don't recognize your own qualities. That humility has to be totally taken away, has to be discarded. And so the Torah takes out the letter Yud from Hikriv and says Hakrev, in order to teach us that such humility is unwarranted and totally not kosher. And this is all connected with the holiday of Shavuos, because on the holiday of Shavuos is the holiday that we became these leaders. I said this story more than once, that the chief rabbi of England, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, said that he went and he visited many great leaders. And he also visited the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he said, what was the difference between all these other leaders and the Rebbe? He said, all of these other leaders were looking for followers. But the Rebbe was looking to create leaders. And this is the power that we were endowed with on the holiday of Shavuos. That each one of us was endowed with this power of becoming a leader. And even though leadership must be coupled with humility, not to speak condescending to other people, not to talk down to people. At the same time, leadership also requires to realize what our talents are and to fulfill our mission in this world. And that mission is, as we said earlier, to be a kingdom of priests, to bring the entire world, Jew and non-Jew, closer to God. And how do we do this? We do this by teaching our children and teaching our friends and teaching our neighbors and teaching all the nations of the world the 7 Noahide laws. Now, teaching does not merely mean or literally mean that you have to tell people what to do. Teaching can also be by example. Statistically, it has been shown that parents who live by example have a greater impact on their children. And similarly, there was a person that once came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe for dollars, and he told the Rebbe that my sons, they're more observant, but my daughters are not so observant. How do I get my daughters to become more observant? So the Rebbe said, be a living example. That is the easiest and the cheapest way to accomplish what you have to accomplish. And this is the message of this week's Parsha. As we conclude the holiday of Shavuos, and we saw God on Sinai, and the Jewish people wanted to have this intimate relationship with God on a constant basis, because God comes down on Sinai, and it was a great relationship. The Jews were on a high, but after that, God disappears. So Moshe Rabbeinu comes down to the Jewish people and he says, you know, if you want to have God constantly in your life, then build for God a temple. By building for God a temple, we build God a home. God now has a place to dwell down here on earth. And therefore, the temple was now created. The Mishkan was now created. And through the Mishkan, Jews and God, and the world and God, have the ability to unite on an intimate level on a daily basis by the fact that we constantly bring these sacrifices, which is through prayer and through Torah study and through charity, which are the 3 basic elements of the temple. We find that in the Beis Hamikdash there were 3 vessels that had a crown around it. One was the shulchan, which was the table, the bread, the showbreads. The second thing was the ark. And the third was what? The altar. These 3 vessels in the temple had a crown around them, which implies that these 3 vessels were special. The ark is the place where God put the tablets. The tablets represent the study of the Torah. So the first thing is, if we want God to dwell in our life, we have to study Torah every day. Therefore, before you go to work, you take a Chumash, or a Tehillim, or a Tanya, or a Mishnah, or a Talmud, or a Rambam, and you open it up and you study a few lines. And by doing so, you have vision and you have direction where to go. And then you also pray. The idea of prayer is to take this learning and to internalize it. The idea of prayer is meditation. What do you meditate on? Not on nothing, on something. On the teachings of the Torah, to internalize it, that it becomes part of our life. And then we give tzedakah, charity, which means we actualize that which we studied and we prayed about. And by doing so, God gives us the ability to be successful in our day. He gives us the ability to be successful in our work. That we should make money, make a living, but also more than that, to be able to be an influence and to meet these people and inspire them that they too should contribute to the world. The story is told that a man once came to a great rabbi and said, Rabbi, I'm working so hard, but I'm not making any money. What do I do? So the rabbi said to him, money needs salt. He says, money needs salt? What does that mean? Do I sprinkle my money with salt? He says, no. Just like salt is something which gives taste to the food and preserves the food. In the time when there was no refrigeration, we put our food into salt. We packed it in salt. If you want your money to be preserved, you have to pack it in salt. What is salt? Salt is charity. By giving charity to others, that's the way you preserve your money. So this is the message of Nasi. Nasi means to lift up. Nasi es roish b'nei Yisrael. How do we lift up the heads of the Jewish people? The head is something which is used for intellect. By using our intellect for holy things, we are elevating our heads. We are moving our heads to a new dimension, from the finite dimension of human intellect to the infinite dimension of godly intellect. And that lifts up the entire body. If you lift up the foundation of a building, not only the foundation gets higher, but the entire building goes higher. And the same is true if you lift up your head, the entire body goes up also. So if you start today with the study of Torah and the knowledge of Torah, this has the ability to lift up the entire body. And by doing so, everything we do, all the money that we come in contact with, and all the people that we come in contact with, we also have the ability to elevate them as well. So, on the holiday of Shavuos, we wish one another to receive the Torah b'simcha b'pnimius, to receive the Torah with joy and to internalize it. And by studying Torah with joy and happiness, we have the ability to internalize it in a very meaningful way. And therefore, we are not only studying the Torah, but we are a living Torah. I told the story once before that at Simchas Torah, when it came to the first and last Hakafa, the Rebbe would dance with his brother-in-law, the Rashag. And they both hold the Torah on their arms, and they would put their hands on each other, and they would go into a circle. That was the first and last Hakafa in 770. I was not there, but I heard once that the Rashag, the Rebbe's brother-in-law, tripped and he fell. He had the Torah and he fell on the floor. And everybody there ran to grab the Torah that was falling. And the Rebbe said you have to grab the person first, before the Torah. And the reason is why? Because we are a living Torah. When we study Torah and we internalize Torah, we ourselves are a walking Torah. And therefore that is the most important thing. To put a Torah away in the ark and forget about it was not the objective. The objective was to study the Torah and become a walking Torah and a moving Torah and a living Torah. By doing so, we bring God to the whole world and make the entire world into a holy temple. So we hope and pray that with the receiving of the Torah on Shavuos, with the study of Nasi, and with the imperative of Hakriv, to lead and to offer, and to remove the letter Yud, which deals with false humility, we will truly make the world into a holy place when God and humankind will dwell together with the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days.